CSI, Color Science Investigation.
So, anyway, this man needs no introduction at all. He is the founder of Guru Nation, and he has been in the industry for a long time. I say, well, this is coming up for my fourth decade. Dennis is along those lines, and he was always also the chemist that worked with Shady Q, and he did like the beauty school, and then went back to get his degree. Is it you call it, Dennis? Is that what we would call it, a degree
Say it again.
in chemistry?
What? Oh, I got my degree in chemistry.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he is the man that can give you all the answers and the correct answers, not the YouTube answers and not any other form of internet answers. So I've invited Dennis along tonight just to try and bridge that gap, because I feel it's so difficult, Dennis, when we are trying to bridge that gap of people jumping to formula. It's
Right.
like they don't know what they don't know. And
Absolutely.
they are having those where results are working, and they're fabulous hairdressers. They are like, their techniques are amazing. They've been
Sure.
behind the chair. But when something goes wrong, they don't understand it because
Right.
the bridge is not there and they've missed that gap. What do you say about that? What is your opinion on that?
Oh, I totally agree. Here's the thing I see happening in our industry is that we've had to learn on our own. When we all took our initial education, they gave us very basic, limited information, especially about the world of hair color. And so for many of us, we had to search it out. But we would run across occasionally a piece that we knew was important. And we hung on to that piece. We knew it was important. We didn't know how it fit with everything else, but it was a piece that we had. And I think that's what we have, is that today in our industry, we have a lot of people that have a lot of pieces, puzzle pieces, but they have no way to put them together. And once you see them together, you see the whole picture. And I think that today it's about, here's what I just did a podcast on my podcast program called What I've Learned in 40 Years.
A
And
lot,
one of
a
the
lot.
things, and one of the things that I learned was because I was lamenting, I was saying, why, when I teach information, why do the people keep coming back and I have to do it over and over and over and over again?
Yeah.
And I think that it's because we split into two groups in a craft. There are those who want to know why, so they don't do it again. And there are those who just want to know how. Just tell
Yeah,
me what to do to fix it. And
absolutely.
I don't think that's going to change because that's part of human nature. But if we had a better foundation, all of the problems that we discuss on social media and all of those things would not exist. They truly would not. They're still going to happen, but how to deal with them. I just finished a book called Language of Color, which is my history. I decided I was going to tell my story where I discovered my mentor, Sam Lappin, and how Sam trained me. Because I have people who they'll call me and I'll help them with a formulation and they'll go, "How did you do that?" And I went, "I don't know. I just know it." Because I went through those 4 stages of learning. One, I didn't know I didn't know. Two, I knew I didn't know. Three, I knew I knew something. And four, I did not know I knew. It just became automatic. And that's what happens once those pieces all fit together. Then it becomes automatic. And it's hard to explain to somebody when you say, I just know that is the way it is. And I think that those were the missing pieces. And it was not that people taught us wrong, it's that they gave us incomplete information.
Absolutely. Because
And
when
and
I,
because they were incomplete, you had to create your own bridge. And
yeah,
that was that based on how you interpreted what they were saying. The words we use are so important in this industry. And there's actually a language, but people don't use that language. We make up a word or we hear somebody, an educator, and they make up a word. And that's what we're subject to today in this industry. There are young people who get all of their information from social media, internet, and they still struggle when hair color doesn't go right, or they struggle when the color fades prematurely. They struggle with great coverage, all of those things, because it's not their fault. It's that they weren't given complete information. And
Absolutely.
the only way we can do that is try to find those and help them with those pieces so that they can understand why. Because once it's hard to watch some of this stuff on social media.
It's difficult. When I did my education, I trained as an all-round hairdresser, but mainly a cutter, because when you, back in the day, colour was root application, pull highlights through a cap, and a full head colour. That was
Right.
basically what you did. And when you toned at the backwash, I can still feel the fear, to be honest, because you would look at it, you would see what was happening, and you'd be like, get off, don't leave it on too long, because you didn't understand, you didn't
Right.
know. And then when I started to have those horrible feelings, that's where I found you, Dennis, because I started to research and I started to want to understand. If it goes, as I would say, tits up, then you can fix it, you can mend it.
Yes.
Rather than a toner and then you take it off too soon, it's not done its job properly because you've not allowed it to do that. And then
Right.
trying to use a purple shampoo to get rid, and you're just trying all these different things that you've heard because you don't understand. How do we get through to colorists? How do we do that? Because I find it
Well,
difficult.
I think we have to use a lot of analogies. People learn better by using an analogy or some metaphor, take it out of the world of color and try to put it into something they will understand. I think I told you the story before. I had one of my students call me and he said, I can learn a lot from you, but you use words I've never heard. And I'm thinking, words. The words I use when you talk chemistry are the accurate words. They are the word, they are the appropriate word. But we don't understand that. Look, people still think that the blue dye molecule is bigger than the red and the yellow.
Yes,
People still think we're depositing color in the hair. We're not. We're building color on the inside of the hair. That's what we
that's it.
do. And it's not paint, it's chemistry. If those things don't connect and they don't build a strong color molecule inside the hair, you won't see color. Simple as that.
That's it.
But it's about helping people understand that, because understanding that will make a huge difference. But we live in a world where pressure, think about the salon. The salon is pressure.
Yeah.
You've got clients that need to get done. You've got working on a time schedule. You don't plan for color correction when it happens to you in your own, you create it yourself. You didn't plan for that. And sometimes we don't know how to step back and go, wait a minute, let me see what's happening here, and I can adjust this immediately. We get really emotional and we lose control. And I think again, it comes from the thing is that if you learn to how you think about color is so important. It's not necessarily what I had a student tell me this one time. He said, I know the difference when I was teaching code, hair color code, which is the way I formulate. He said, I now understand why I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, why? He said, because you think of the color orange. I think of it as orange. You think of it as RY. I go, right. That's the way I was trained. Colors do not, remember, colors are a composition. They are not, and it's like the hue part of hair color is the alphabet. You take an alphabet, you can make all kinds of words, but very few of them on their own are a perfect descriptor. So think about the parts. Every color has a part. If it's a violet base, it has a one part blue, one part red. If it's mahogany, it's got two parts of red, one part of blue. If it's copper, it's got two parts of red and one part of yellow. But if you think of it instead of copper as RRY, then it makes it really easy for you to understand. It's like when I combine the parts of this shade of color, and then I put a second shade of color in the bowl, And then just because I'm nervous, I put a third shade of color in the bowl. And all of these people influence each other. All of these parts influence each other. So you're not planning on the influence. All you're doing is thinking, well, now I'm adding this to this to this to this, and you end up creating a color that's not, maybe it doesn't have any reflect. You killed the reflect. You wanted reflect in your color, but you killed it. Not because of anything other than you overformulated for a color. I believe hair color is not how many shades you can use. It's the minimum amount it takes to achieve the result. And then there's the other influence that comes from the hair. We don't count on that. We think sometimes when we formulate, it's all what's in the bowl that makes the color. It is not.
That was my next question. My next question was, what does the hair tell you that the client can't?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because the hair is 50% of your result is always going to be what the hair is contributing. And all hair does not contribute the same amount of influence. So, like if you have someone who has, let's say, a lot of cool pigment in their hair, and you're counting on warm pigment to support your color, you're not going to get it. Only because it's not the way that hair lightens. It's not the lightening path of that hair. If you're counting on creating a cool shade and someone who has a lot of warm pigment in their hair, you're not going to make your goal. Not because of anything other than the hair didn't give you the 50% you needed to create that cool result at the end. So those are all the parts. So when I do code, I say, here's my color. Let's say it's brown with copper. So that's 1 blue, 2 reds, 3 yellows for the background, copper, 2 reds and a yellow, and the hair is contributing gold. That's 2 yellows and a red. When I put all those pieces together, and then I look for background, tone, and reflect. Those are the 3 things that are always present in every hair color. Background is normally brown or gray, so I isolate where's brown, where's gray. Then what's left over is my tone, and if there's anything left over, that's my reflect. Now it tells me immediately before I do my color what my visual result will probably be. Now, code is not chemistry. Code is translation. It's not chemistry, but it helps someone understand what the result will be before they formulate. And if it doesn't sound like it's going to be appropriate result, you can make an adjustment before you ever mix any color at all.
Or even open a tubey tint. One of the things that I love, you taught me this, was like looking at your eye color and stuff as well, because I can
Yep.
go into a consultation, check out the eye color, and right away I'm like, this is going to be a problem. We need
Yeah.
to do a course, or superb, this is going to be quite an easy result that I can achieve. It's
Right.
taking all those things into consideration.
Right. And if you are able to do that, then you can create a color result that will give you a great color, beautiful tone. I believe balanced color is not always equal parts. Balance means simply how do things play against each other? Because here's the reality. When we color hair, we're not using a paint, so we're not covering the hair. We talk about it like we are. And again, unfortunately, when we communicate that way, people envision it as I'm going to put a color over it. You're not. You're marrying the hair's influence with the color's influence. Now, that color is going to fade. You have to keep in mind what's going to happen down the line. Okay? Is there going to be harmony until they come back in for a retouch, or is there going to be contrast? You see people on social media saying, well, blonde hair rejects ash. And I go, well, what do you mean it rejects ash? Well, it does. It doesn't hold on to ash. No, it holds on to ash as long as it would hold on to a warm shade. The difference is I am using complementary colors or competing shades. I'm using a cool shade on a warm head of hair. I'm going to notice the contrast much quicker than if I'm using a warm shade on a warm shade of hair. And so That's what they're saying, but the way they explain it is that ash is rejected. So you've got to overtone. You've got to use a lot of strong ash. If you lift them to an 8, you got to tone them with a 7. Well, I'm sorry, but now you're talking about visual value. If they want to be an 8, toning them with a 7 is not going to keep them at the 8. It's going to make the hair look visually darker.
That's it.
Can you control or create a happy marriage at an 8? Sure you can. If you understand how tone influences contributing warmth by the hair. And again, that's finding that balance. Finding that balance. So because we know the color is going to fade. I was in a program Monday. A friend of mine was doing an online program, invited me to sit in. And one of the colorists that was expressing his creative way he does it, he was doing base bumps at the scalp area just to move the hair slightly, and he was under processing the color. He had under processed it. I mean, instead of 30 minutes, he had processed for 10 or 15 minutes. And his concept was the reason I bump the base with it, I know the hair is going to contribute warmth, but I want to have that base bump to where the hair's warmth does not overtake it over a period of time. He knows the color is going to fade away. He knows the color is going to be a little bit lighter than he wanted it to be, but he's doing that to finesse that color he's trying to create, which creatively makes perfect sense. Sometimes you can underprocess a color for an effect. Nothing wrong with that. Now, that doesn't mean you always underprocess a color. It means you can, but you understand it's going to be limited because the amount of deposit you get in those first 5 to 10 minutes is really very limited. But if you can use it to create an effect, I don't have a problem with that. But in our industry, people want it black or white. Do I do it or do I not do it? Well, it all depends. It's down to that point. It's like they'll ask me questions and I'll say, well, tell me don't take it out of context. Give me the whole picture because I can't speak to something that I don't know the whole picture, what's actually happening.
And I feel sometimes we not try and ignore, but we also ignore what previous services are on the hair and how that's going to affect the service we're doing just now. I think sometimes people ignore it, and this is where they go, oh, potluck. I'm going to just wish in a prayer that this is going to work for me. I know that on my virgin hair, this is what I'm going to achieve. On those ends, God knows.
Yeah, the hair remembers everything. And if you don't pay attention to that, it will come back and bite you in the fanny. Okay?
I love that. I love
The
that. I'm going to use
remembers. The hair remembers. And you're absolutely right. We want to ignore that. It's like we say, okay, well, the hair's gotten better. No, if the hair had a chemical service, it has all been changed permanently, period, permanently. It will never go back to what it was before. It can be maintained, but it's not going to go back to what it was before you started. And so we have to understand that. What is the history? What's happening with that hair? What about the texture? Different textures take color differently. People with natural curl in their hair, if you just do a simple application, especially if it's really got different curls in it, sometimes it takes color differently. The reason is because curly hair has a different structure than straight hair. And it has a different ratio of cuticle layers on the inside of the curl versus the outside of the curl, which means that could I get the shadowy effects if I just color curly hair and not pay attention to that? Yes, you could. But we think we want everything in a general box. Hair's hair. Well, yes, that's true. But different hair textures take color differently. That's the reason color goes dark around the front of the hairline. It goes dark around the front of the hairline because the hairline in many cases is much finer than the rest of the head. And so what will happen is finer hair uptakes color much more dramatically than medium or coarser textures of hair. So if I'm applying the same application scalp to end, does it make sense then the finer hair is going to uptake the color a little bit stronger? And in most cases, when you're using a blended colors, that means they've got background, tone, and reflect. The uptake is always going to be more of the background, not as much of the tone or the reflect. That's
Yeah.
when people say, I used that level 7 and it turned into a level 4. Well, no, it can't turn into a level 4. What happens is you see more background, you see less tone.
How important would you say, just when you pick up on background, some people don't take background into consideration. So when you
No,
are toning or you're putting something on, you need to understand that if you have your number before your point, you are adding more background in. It's not just about the using your tone and your reflect, you're adding the background. So you need to,
right,
this is where we get the throw it in the bowl, throw it in the bowl, and we end up with a mucky puddle.
right. Every color has background in it. Okay, you can't mix resorcinol and PPD without creating background. You can't mix resorcinol and PTD without creating background. It has influence. It's going to have stronger influence because most backgrounds are either brown or gray, depends on your brand. Cool shades usually have gray backgrounds. Normal shades have usually brown background. So understanding it, I started my field guide series and I just started it with understanding background, tone, and reflect. And I try to get people to understand it. Imagine color as a three-story building. You have the foundation, that's background. That's what holds the color on tone. In other words, you're going to shampoo the hair on a regular basis. What you're going to lose over a period of 30 days is going to be really tone and reflect. It's not going to have much effect on background at all, based upon the level of color that you use. So background is the foundation. Then you have tone. This is the language that we use. It's the language we speak. Golden, mahogany, red, copper. That's the tone we have. And tone is only as effective as the background will allow it to be. So if I have a color that has 50% background, 50% tone, that color is going to the background is going to be dominant. Now, the third part is reflect. Is the very smallest amount of what's in a shade of color, and it can be an accent color. Sometimes it affects the result without even seeing it, especially in copper shades. Sometimes they add a little extra more of an orange tone to it to give it more reflect, more vibrancy. So when you understand it as background tone and reflect, it makes perfect sense. And then, of course, you have to add in the fourth influence, which is what the hair contributes. That's happening underneath. And so, if we understood color that way, instead of it's a mahogany, it would make a huge difference. And a lot of people, they say, well, but I'm only adding 5 grams of this, and 5 grams has background in it. If you add 10 grams, that has background in it. So every time you add another shade to the formula, background is there. That's why people have challenges with gray coverage, because they try to cover gray with tone and reflect alone. And what happens is that the end color ends up looking hollow. Okay. But if you add just a small amount of background, I call it like an anchor. It's like you drop an anchor, a little small amount of background, it's going to give substance and richness to that shade without overpowering it. And the color is going to look much more successful. But that's understanding how to deal with those. And they're there. Whether you want to know them about them or not, doesn't matter. They're there. It's like you can't fight it. You can ignore it, but you can't fight it. You're going to have it. I remember my mentor said to me one day, he said, Dennis, the difference between you and I when it comes to hair color challenges? I said, no, Sam, what? He said, I can fix mine. The question is, can you fix yours?
That is it. That is absolutely it. Yes.
And
Love
that was the gauntlet. He threw down in his most gentle way. He was very soft spoken, but I understood what he meant.
Because you, if you, I've seen it. I don't know if it's been launched yet. It's called The Language of Colour. Is that a book again, Dennis? Was it?
That's my book.
Because I've got your Pirate Pigment one, and I've seen that
Yes.
The Language of Colour was out. What is that entailing then? What's involved with The Language of Colour?
Okay. When I wrote The Language of Color, I was encouraged to do that because, well, I'll tell you quick my whole story because I'm like knee deep in writing now. It's just like I need to get it done. My first book, Captain Color versus the Pigment Pirates, was successful. We're at over 10,000 copies worldwide. The challenge was that it was heavy in text. It was, you got to remember this, you got to remember that, and all of that. And the fact is that people don't like to read heavy text, especially hairdressers. So I started another book called The Hair Speaks, which will be coming out in September, which is a workbook that goes with Captain Color. In other words, I said, okay, so they would read the information, but they wouldn't implement because they didn't know how to implement. I assumed, shame on me as an author, I assumed that they would. So I wrote this one as a step by step. In other words, the scenario. Here's what you're doing. Here's what you have. Here's what you're probably seeing. Here's the decisions most people make. Here's a better decision. And here's how you walk through it. I did that for that book. So that book will be coming in September because in the middle of that, I decided I needed to talk about the language of color because the language I use is different than a lot of people, even a lot of educators, in fact. So I started writing The Language of Color, which started out to be just a smaller book to go with The Hair Speaks. Well, The Language of Color turned out to be 190 pages. And what I did is I wrote my story. It's my story with Sam and where I started and the things I went through and the challenges and the questions I had. And then I've incorporated visuals because hairdressers are really much better with visuals. I incorporated visuals, and those visuals alone are standalone education pieces. In other words, we put the education in the visuals and told the story in the text. And so I'm really proud of that. Well, when I got that done, it was a large book. And to have all that printed with color and all of that, it would be a very expensive book for someone to invest in. So one of my friends said, well, what if we cut it into volumes? And so we did. So we cut it into 3 volumes. They're 66 pages apiece. And that book, you can buy volume 1, you can buy volume 2 when you want, or buy volume 3 at the end if you like. Or you can buy the full book and have the book. So that's how I started to talk about that, because I wanted people to understand where the language came from, that it's a real thing, it's real language, and everything that I've ever learned. We talk about value, we talk about hue, value, and chroma, and we explain what the difference between them are. We talk about lighting, how hair color can be misinterpreted in lighting. So those are the kinds of things that are real important. I have a visual. We even talk about why color exists. Why are bluebirds blue? All of these things so that someone can actually pick that up and they can understand that there is truly a language. I always say that hue, value, and chroma are principles. They're principles. What we teach in this industry is not always principles. Like I had to learn values, and Sam would take me, well, he would take pictures, black and white and color, and have me identify the value. I learned values. He says, if you don't know values, levels don't matter.
Yeah.
And because values are really a principle, an art principle. Levels are a mathematical equation that was created by manufacturers to help hairdressers learn how to formulate color. That's the history of levels. There were no levels when I started out. In fact, Clairol, big in this country, right? Clairol would say, if you use moon gold on a dark brown, this is what you'll get. If you use moon gold on a light brown, this is what you would get. That's the way they taught people to formulate. So that's why our industry got caught up in recipes. So, I want to give people an insight into how all of that happened. And I've got pictures of where Sam would scratch out on a piece of paper and be one blue, two reds, and three yellows. It brought tears to my eyes when I read the book back. I went, my God, it brings back those memories
Memories.
and the way I was taught to learn. And it was great. It was great.
Well,
And that's why I can't say, how do I know that? I just know it. It's
you
what
just
I've
do.
always known.
I would say that if somebody had your book and then they picked up mine, the two of them would marry so well together because mine's is about the confidence. And I love how you say the scenario
I saw
thing of
that.
it because that's what we've done. Maybe over like with the writing and stuff, but we've did this is your scenario, and if this happens to you, this is how you would deal with it confidently. So
Right.
being able to give that confidence with that science, what an amazing partnership.
Oh,
You the why, but you have the confidence to carry that through.
right.
You're rocking, aren't
Right.
you?
Well, we're in a people business at the end of the day. Yes, we do skills, we perform different skills, but we're really in a people business. And you've got to be, and I find one of the reason people are not confident is because they don't know. They feel like they go fake it till you make it. Well, you don't have to do that. If you just learn the skill and you learn the information, that gives you amazing confidence. That's why when a color correction comes in the salon and someone's struggling with it, I just go, wait, you don't have to struggle. Send her over here. I'll fix it. I invite those. I love those challenges because
Because I think as a hairdresser, sometimes we want it when we're working with people, we want to make that person happy. That's what our job is, and
yes,
that's what we enjoy. We don't enjoy saying, no, I'm sorry, we can't reach what you're looking for today. If we're going to fix this, we will have to do this. I know it's not what you want, but this is the road we're going to have to take. We're not good at that.
absolutely.
We just want to
Yeah.
go, I can achieve that
Oh,
for you and cause ourselves an absolute nightmare.
yeah. Samantha, I say, how many times you remember in your life, have you been talked into doing something by someone and you knew it wasn't going to end well to begin with?
You've got
But
that gut feeling telling you, don't do it, but we still
yes,
did it anyway. Yeah. Well,
absolutely.
we have just under 5 minutes left, Dennis. I would
Okay.
love you to quickly just tell us about this new product. Is it in the UK yet?
Spectralift.
Yes.
Not yet, but we are in Canada, so we're working our way to Europe. We're still the amount of paperwork involved when you're trying to market a
Yeah.
product overseas is really crazy. But Spectralift is amazing because what Spectralift does, when you add it to your color, and it does basically three things. Number one, it modifies or buffers or controls the oxidation process. If you think about it, if you've ever heard me explain it, or if anybody ever explained how color works, color is a collision course. You mix all these things together, you put them on the head like a little hurricane, and the molecules are smashing against each other. That's why some will survive, some won't. Some are being destroyed before they ever get out of the bowl. It's chaos.
And
I always
they don't develop at the same time neither.
no,
They're
no,
developing
they
at different
don't.
times.
Exactly. Even though we say they're working simultaneous, that's true, but they're not working in sync with each other. So that's the first thing it does. The second thing that it does is that it protects the hair. It helps to remove the chemical stress or minimize the chemical stress on the hair. So at the end of that color process, even with color, before you use any treatment, the hair is going to feel unbelievably great. Okay. And the fine thing it does is it protects the pigment. In other words, we know pigment gets destroyed during a color process. Well, this product helps to protect those dye intermediates so they have a chance to actually bond together and create a strong color molecule that will be long lasting. It helps you can color lifts color now. You can use it with a color, you can lift through a color. We've had all kinds of results where you don't have to use a bleach. You can use a color and it will accelerate in certain situations, accelerate the lift. It helps with great coverage. It's amazing what it does for great coverage. The biggest
So
issue with great coverage.
sorry, I just want to
Sure,
take it
sure.
before we actually forget. So when you're saying that it protects like your dye intermediates, What is the main factor for a colorist? That is like it prevents fade then. We get less fade.
Yes, it will get less fade because you get a stronger color molecule.
Yeah.
And it also, with great coverage, the biggest reason that great coverage sometimes looks hollow is only because you didn't get complete dye development. This protects those dye intermediates and allows you to get complete dye development. So it's an amazing product. And what we say is that it's not like an additive that is it becomes part of your chemical process. It's not, it just, once you start using it, you're going to find that it's going to be part of your color service. And it's going to cut down on your color usage, because by using SpectraLift in your formula, you reduce the amount of pigment or color you have to use. So it's going to help you, even though it's more of a cost, it's going to help you reduce the amount of color you're using.
So if you, from what we were chatting tonight, if we finish it off, what would you say to a stylist that's watched this and took this on board and thought to themselves, this is me. I am that person that doesn't understand the why. I'm getting good results, but if I get bad results, I don't understand. What would be your quick takeaway for them? What would you tell them to do?
If you're the person that still is struggling with understanding the why, you need to find information that will give you that why. I happen to be one of those places. Reach out to me, Guru Nation, www.gurunation.net. And we have a multitude of different educational programs, and seek that information out, because once you learn the why, everything else becomes easier. As my mentor always said, if the why, the how is simple.
Well, it's been amazing. I could talk to you all night. We need to do another one for sure.
Oh, bless your heart. We'll have to do this again.
Yes, because I just love everything that goes on. And you have been like the guy that has stopped me from having sleepless nights. And I'm like you now. It's like, what do you mean you can't fix it? Pass it over here and let me have a look, because I'm sure I can. Whereas beforehand, I'd be like, you can't fix it. Don't come at me. Don't speak to me. But
I got to go to the back room. I don't want to do this. But no, it's great. It's a wonderful business. But it even becomes more wonderful when you have that confidence.
yeah.
CSI Color Science Investigation.